pause lock. Wait, no, sorry. I mean deadlock. I bet you didn't see that coming, did you? Well, I recently got invited to test Deadlock, and I have now played the most of the cast at this point extensively enough to the point where I feel confident enough to share my thoughts about the game. Before we jump into what makes Deadlock what it is, though, let's talk about the art for a little bit. The sound design and the overall aesthetic of the game is amazing. Deadlock is set in an era in reality in the late 1900s, where the people dressed better than they do nowadays and had a little bit more class. Granted, there were less positive traits amongst the people during this era, like discrimination and so on, but we're talking about Deadlock here. Anyway, in this setting, the supernatural is more on the quote-unquote normal side of things. There is still a little bit of skepticism from the people in this world, but that changed when the Maelstrom happened. A celestial event that is a storm-like event that happens in the sky, hence the artwork on the intro screen. Since the event of the Maelstrom, the supernatural became a part of everyday life. Computers and general electronics started being powered by magic. Then souls were started to be used as currency instead of the general dollar bill. The Big Apple became the Cursed Apple. You're probably starting to get the gist at this point. Now, there is still a decent bit more lore to go over even in this early development stage of the game, but there are other videos on that and I have no intention of making this a lore video. Moving along, let's talk about the artwork more specifically now. I will say this now that I love the art in this game. I love the loading screens, I love the little effects you get when you hover over items in the shop, to hovering over heroes in the select menu, to the sounds that you hear when you select things, and then the little voice lines you get when you select and deselect heroes.
Jersey sucks, but it doesn't suck as much as Long Island. You know what? You did not select me. I unselected you. Piss off.
And then once everybody's loaded in, you hear like a little jingle, like indicating that the match is done loading in and everybody's ready to play. It's all just the little things that matter and that add up to people who are actively paying attention. Similar to how you edit a video and add little things that only the people that are actually paying attention to the video will catch. Anyway, we talked about the art, we talked about the story, we talked a little bit about some of the things that I like about the game so far. Now let's talk about what makes Deadlock what it is. Deadlock is Valve's new MOBA. If you're not familiar with the MOBA genre, the games belonging to that genre are Dota 2, League of Legends, and Smite, just to name a few, where the objective is to push your minions up the lanes and take each of the enemy objectives, while fighting off the enemy team as you work your way up to the final shrine and ultimately win the game. Normally these games typically consist of 4 lanes, with areas riddled with small pathways in between, commonly referred to as the jungle. Deadlock has a jungle, but only 3 lanes. The game did start with 4, but was reduced to 3 lanes. Anyway, Deadlock is a little different because, like with Smite, you have a third-person perspective. You shoot with left-click, right-click zooms into your crosshair, and you also have a melee attack that you perform when pressing Q on your keyboard. And when you hold Q, it charges a heavy attack. Now when you press F, a small blue barrier appears around your character that can parry a melee attack and stun the attacker for a few seconds, effectively giving you a free damage and a free kill if they're low enough. Now this parry system offers a lot of value in the higher tiers, where you will see people trying to bait out melee attacks to get free damage or even quick and easy kills. Then you have the small little bars under your crosshair, which is your stamina, allowing you to dash and jump around and offer a little bit of verticality to the game's movement. You can combine these two into what they refer to as a jump dash, where when you dash and then shortly after press spacebar, you will launch yourself forward into a jump dash, offering you a quick way to get around and engage the enemy even, but it takes 2 of your stamina bars, and with some characters you only have the 2, so you can effectively put yourself in a bad position and unable to escape if you get swarmed. Lastly, your abilities. You level them up, they get stronger, you press the button, and boom, they activate. Pretty simple stuff. Getting back on track though, you start out in the lane phase, which is usually the first 10 minutes of the game, because afterwards it becomes a lot more than just focusing entirely on the lanes, because you have better camps spawning, and one of the most important resources in the game also is called the Sinner Sacrifice, which also spawns at the 8-minute mark. The The Sinner Sacrifice is the second most effective way to obtain souls, which is used to buy items for your heroes. And if you've played MOBAs before, you can understand how important items are. So just like with gold and other MOBAs, you use your souls to buy items. We'll talk more about items later. There is a small trick to the Sinner's Sacrifice though, because you can't simply just walk up and interact with them. You have to hit them with your melee attack, but if you want to quickly and efficiently grab them, you want to use your heavy melee attack, because it will do more damage. Kind of self-explanatory, but anyway. Doing more damage to them allows you to grab them faster and get out faster, and also go back to the lane and help your teammate. That's not all though. Once you get it low enough, you will start to see that the lights start to light up in a specific way, from left to right. Once the thirdmost bulb on the right is lit up, you charge your melee attack, and then you hit the jackpot timing, giving you some buffs. Typically, you'll get some things like max HP, max ammo, fire rate, etc, etc. The buffs vary, so it's just more gambling on top of gambling. Now let's talk about the final and arguably most important resource, the walkers. Walkers are the second most important objective aside from your team patron's shrine. Why are they the most second important? Because each walker you take down gives you another slot for your items. This is another thing that puts Deadlock apart from other MOBAs. You have 3 slots locked behind each of the enemy team's walkers, whereas in other MOBAs you'd have all your slots available to you from the beginning. You just need the money to fill them. This can effectively neutralize the team's effectiveness in the later stages of the game if your team is slot locked, while your enemy team might have all their slots. This game is very balanced around this system. Speaking of items and being slot locked, let's actually go ahead and talk about some of the items, because items can be upgraded from each other, allowing you to be more flexible with your slots, and sometimes upgraded items is all you can do when you don't have any more slots to use. So let's talk about the items in this game, and by extension, the builds that you can make in this game with said items. You have 3 different types of items, each with 4 different tiers. Like I mentioned before, some items can be upgraded into stronger versions of those items, and on top of that, it will cost less than just buying the item directly. Let's start with the gun-focused items. These items do exactly what you would think they do, and they enhance your gun damage, which is the damage type you will deal when you press your left click or mouse 1. Items like Extended Magazine, which give you extra damage and ammo, Monster Rounds, which lets you deal more damage to minions and camps, Point Blank, which makes you deal increased damage when in close proximity to the enemy, Weighted Shots, which applies a slow when you land enough damage on the enemy. You get the idea. Each of these items enhances your ability to deal damage and counter other gun builds, like with items such as Hunter's Aura, reducing bullet resistance and fire rate when the enemy is close to you. Next up is HP items. Most of these items are super self-explanatory. They give you more HP, HP regen, and in general, just better ways to survive longer. Items like Battle Vest, giving you bullet resistance while also increasing your damage when you are above 65% HP. Lifesteal, which lets you steal HP from the enemy that you shoot with your bullets, or with the abilities that you have that do spirit damage. Last but not least, spirit items. These items often enhance your abilities either by providing you with things like cooldown reduction, longer duration, or just simply improved damage. Or just simply applying some kind of debuff that counters an enemy hero's ability to perform actions like with the Cursed Relic. You can interrupt them, silence them, and prevent them from using items or any of their other abilities. Now, on the subject of silencing heroes and their abilities, let's actually talk about some of the heroes. In total, there are 38 heroes. Each are completely different and unique from each other, and also, at the same time, which I think is very cool, at the beginning of each match, you will sometimes have a conversation with said character that's in your lane.
Men like you call people like me demons, so no, I don't trust you.
Young man, I don't care about the circumstances of your birth. I care about who you are. I don't give a damn if you look like a monster. But if you act like one, I will put you down.
Yeah, I definitely don't trust you.
This, I feel like, breathes a little bit of life into the game and is also what I would expect from a game developer like Valve. It's just like the little things of how the characters interact with each other. You know, some of them like each other, some of them hate each other, some of them have this like neutral acquaintance level of relationship with them. So It's just really cool to see this little kind of detail in a game that's still in its quote-unquote alpha stage. I would say it's more in a beta stage, but anyway, let's get back on track. You have your typical tanks, your rushdown bruisers, your supports, and your DPS characters. There are a lot of characters to go over, so I will only go over the characters that I have personally played extensively. So let's start off with Abrams, the demonic detective and one of the more iconic characters in Deadlock.
Take out its furnace.
Abrams is your typical tank character. He has lots of HP, lots of regen, and can pack quite a punch with his melee attacks, dealing a nice chunk of damage. The abilities for Abrams allow him to be in the thick of it, often in the very center of team fights due to this very reason. The ability Siphon Life, which deals damage and siphons life off the enemy team, hence the name Siphon Life. You have your shoulder charge, which is exactly what it sounds like. Abrams will charge into the enemy, and when you slam them into a wall, it stuns them for a short time. Eventually to the point he can get a free heavy attack in once he upgrades the ability enough. Infernal Resilience lets Abrams regen when taking damage, letting him stay in the fight for longer. And then you have Seismic Impact, which launches Abrams into the air, slamming his book into the ground with a stunning attack that disrupts the flow of combat and lets your team pick off key targets. So, as you can imagine, Abrams is great for fighting with the team. Next up we have my personal favorite, Billy, the vulgar, hate-filled punk of Deadlock. Billy is very much, by all accounts, a rushdown character. He gets into the fight with his attacks and launches you into the air and then brings you back down, dealing damage and disorienting you, and guess what? If you try to run away, well, he's just going to pull you right back in.
Show me what you got.
Smashdown is Billy's go-to ability, smashing his bat into the ground and dealing damage while also counting as a melee attack, so any melee-focused items that you have will trigger when using Bashdown. You have Rising Ram, which launches you into the air and when comboed with Bashdown, can drag you back down into the ground for some extra damage. Blasted is Billy's way of staying in the fight for prolonged periods of time, and when leveled up, it allows him to use Bashdown, activate Smashed, and then use Bashdown again, effectively giving you a small little 1-2-3 combo. When smashed, you also apply Wrecked to any enemy, letting you deal more gun damage. Chain Gang is Billy's way of refusing to let you run away. It blocks you down, keeps you from using your movement-based abilities, so if you decide to run away, Billy is not going to let you do that. So as you can see, Billy is very much a brawler by all accounts, but he can also be built for a tank role, just like with Abrams. Both characters work great in team fights, but I think Billy has far better 1v1 capabilities than Abrams does. Next up, we have the Professor himself, Dynamo,
Singularity's almost ready.
who is a recent addition to my roster, but a very fun addition nonetheless. Dynamo thrives in team fights just like the previous two, but he also has great 1v1 potential in fights and puts a lot of pressure on the lane at the start of the game. Now, the reason he does that is his first ability, Kinetic Pulse. Kinetic Pulse is Dynamo's bread and butter, stomping the ground and sending a shockwave that, when built for Spirit, can really chip away at your HP very quickly and from very far away. It also clears lanes full of mobs effortlessly. And we have Quantum Entanglement, which is Dynamo's way of denying the enemy their stuns, ultimates, counter items, and so much more. You become effectively intangible for the duration of the ability, while short, if timed properly, you are effectively untouchable and can extend that to your teammates when pressing the middle mouse button and dragging them away to safety. Then we have Rejuvenating Aura, which is a heal that grants a little bit of movement and, well, healing, obviously. The downside is that you have to upgrade it to the max before you can attack while using it. Now, I think this is a good decision from Valve's standpoint, because I think it would be a little silly if you could just sit there and heal yourself while being able to attack and spam abilities at the very beginning of the game. It would be very oppressive, it would be unbalanced, and it would just not be fun to play against. I do not find myself using the healing all that much in the match, but it does come in handy sometimes. Then we have the best ability by far in terms of crowd control, Singularity. This ability effectively locks down an entire enemy team when caught in it, pulling them out of their ultimate abilities, and if your team is with you, it basically hands them free kills on a silver platter. The next and last hero I have played quite a bit of is this sleepy little pillow-hugging creature called Rem. Rem is by all accounts a support character. His first ability is called Pillow Toss and is one of his main ways to attack aside from his default ranged attack. It does massive burst damage and has a small knockback on it to help give teammates some breathing room if they're being chased down by somebody. Then we have Rem's main support ability called Tagalong. Tagalong is Rem's main way to heal his teammates aside from using active items, and also lets him jump from each of his teammates and buff the minions, by the way, at least once. So you can jump onto one teammate, then to the next, then to the next, then to the next, but you can never go back to the previous teammate that you were on. Little Helpers is mainly used to steal Sinner Sacrifices and buff minions, making them run faster and have a bit more HP, and the Helpers will shoot at enemy troops, along with the troops, they're shooting themselves and at enemy players. Nap Time is Rem's ultimate ability, which puts people to sleep and can be very impactful, especially with the ability to target people behind walls and through floors. You might think it's a little busted that it can do that, but in actual practice, it's not as bad as it seems. But since we're talking about balance, let's actually talk about that a little bit. Hey, so quick editor's note here. As of the 22nd, there was a big balance patch that Valve dropped, and it basically made the entire part of the video where I talk about the balance of the game completely null and void. A lot of the characters I had issues with got adjusted and are now a little less miserable to play against. You still absolutely have meta team comps, but the same can be said for any competitive game where a certain group of characters work better together than others. That's kind of just par for the course, so I'm going to go ahead and skip on to talking about the matchmaking. I will say this now, the matchmaking in this game currently, it is straight up terrible. There are times you will be placed into a match where your teammates are completely new to the game or are just completely unaware of how to play their character, which is fine, people have to start somewhere. The problem is that the matchmaking feels as if it expects you to carry more often than not. If you look at websites like tracklock.gg or any other kind of website which showcases your matches, how well you performed, and all the other type of stats that you would expect to see in a website like that, you can see the average performance score of your team. And there will be times that your score exceeds the score of the entire team, labeling you as the hard carry. My running theory is that the game tries its best to balance the teams out with an average score. This theory of mine, for the most part, is confirmed by a lot of people talking online, either on Reddit. I know Reddit's a great source of information, but it's on other places too. The Steam forums, yet another great source, I know, being sarcastic here, but it's also on YouTube videos, and it's also on the Deadlock feedback forums. Now, in my opinion, it's a little too much of a coincidence that I think the matchmaking is terrible and that collectively everyone else also agrees. So if you're the highest score of the entire team, you're gonna have less than average teammates. At least that's been my experience thus far. The problem with that kind of system, in my opinion, is that with the fact that there are only so many people actively playing and testing, quote unquote testing the game, you run into matches where it is incredibly one-sided and either you are the one rolling over the enemy team or you are the one getting rolled over. My suggestion would be that if ranked matches are the default type of match, then you should be matched exclusively with your current rank or one rank above, like in most other games. One game that comes to mind immediately that does this very same thing is the finals, where you will play against people of your caliber and above. The problem is the same thing with that game is that there are not enough people to average out the matchmaking, so you end up with matches just like in Deadlock where you are getting curb stomped into the ground. So the argument could be made that it's not the matchmaking that's the problem, but it's the lack of people being able to fill the matches and average out the player score more evenly. That way, you are playing in your weight class while still playing against people who are better than you, so you can reflect and learn what the enemy did to counter you. Just like you would in any other competitive game, you take the time to reflect and you learn what you could have done better in that moment. Just like you would in any other competitive game, take the time to reflect and learn. Granted, all of these systems are subject to change, so we can only really take the current system in place with a grain of salt and at face value, since they could very well be changed in the future. With matchmaking covered and my complaints of the ranking system, let's talk about the players. I feel as if I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but I will just say this now. If you've ever played a MOBA before, whether it be Smite, League of Legends, Dota 2, or anything else that has been released into the MOBA genre, you will know and understand that this genre of game harbors some of the most toxic and insufferable fucking people on the planet. Deadlock is no different. I have had far more games where I've had people arguing with each other over voice communication rather than actually trying to communicate with the team and win the game. Arguing and saying slurs or racist remarks in the text chat, far off to the point where there are times where I literally just have to turn the text chat off since no one really wants to use it for its intended purpose. God forbid if you try to be the voice of reason and try to get people to focus back on playing and testing the game, because at that point, you've just put a target on your back, and people are going to actively make fun of you, call you a fat ass or some slur, or any other high school level of kind of insult. So my overall opinion of the player base is that there are some people who definitely should not have been invited to play and test the game because they are so obsessed with their rank or their KDA that they forget why they're even there to begin with. Likely because they got invited by a friend to play the game together with them and they're doing just that, playing the game and not testing it. That is not to say that everyone you come across is all that bad. They are not. You will find some people that you work well with and you decide to add each other and start matchmaking together. It will just take a considerable amount of time and effort to sift through the games to find those people. So what is the verdict? What do I think of Deadlock as a whole? To keep it plain and simple, despite the atrocious issues that the game has, because there are absolutely some glaring problems that need to be addressed before this game ever releases, aside from that, the game is fantastic. I think the game has immense potential and could, and very well likely, will be a very big deal when it is fully released. The game has the depth and the mechanics to be very competitive, with the movement having a similar skill ceiling to that of Titanfall 2, or even Gun Z for those of you who are familiar with that title, where you're bouncing off the walls and building up momentum to clear vast distances and quickly transition to different lanes for ganks or just general speed farming camps for souls, while extending the speed boost by making smart use of your stamina bars to get just that little bit of extra distance. Team fights are some of the best that I've ever had in any game. They are satisfying and glorious. The item variety allows you to spend hours testing and crafting a build, fine-tuning it with each match that you play until you finally create something that performs well with your playstyle. And if you're not the type to do theory craft, there's a build browser. You can literally just pick up a build and run with it, and you'll do fairly well with it. The game in its current state on a foundational and technical level is amazing. Valve has created a game that is both fun to play and rewarding to play when you finally start to have all the pieces clicking into place. I look forward to putting many more hours into playing and testing the game and learning the game inside out. However, that's all I have left to say about the game at this time. Maybe I will create another video on it in the future, maybe when a new big update comes out or a new character drops or something like that. But I do have some other ideas planned, and I have the footage to execute those plans, so like always, I thank you for watching to the end, and I will see you in the next one. Laters.